Last time we had Marcus Swanepoel from BitX on this show, it was all about Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? What is cryptocurrency? What is going on in the world? Why can't we just simply deal in dollars, rands, and in euros? Well, the world has moved on. Since then, there's been lots of investment from some luminaries of Silicon Valley and some entrepreneurial figures into the world of Bitcoin. Let's revisit some of those. This is the Moneymakers. Tonight's Moneymaker is Marcus Swanepoel. Well, let's hope he makes some money. He's just raised $4 million to help build BitX. It's astonishing how in 18 months, 2 years, there's just been this rapid evolution in clever people's attitudes towards cyber currencies.
Yes, I think, Bruce, I mean, as you mentioned, I was on your show about 2 years ago and the world's just changed completely. I think the three biggest changes we've seen, one, as you mentioned, there's a huge amount of capital flowing in from Silicon Valley. There's also a lot of people, top brains from big banks and tech companies moving into the Bitcoin industry. That's the one trend. The other one is the adoption's increasing a lot and the price has stabilized a lot. You mentioned last time about the volatility in the price. And I think the third important aspect is from a regulatory perspective, where there was a lot of uncertainty 2 years ago. We are starting to see more certainty in certain jurisdictions.
Well, regulators are actually beginning to treat it seriously, saying, hold on a second, we were hoping it would go away, but we're going to have to deal with it somehow, because there are these computers, these devices, these mines creating cryptocurrencies, bits of zeros and ones to which people attach a value.
Exactly, and I think the regulators across certainly the markets we operate in have done a lot of work, a lot of their own homework, and are starting to understand it a lot better and seeing what the potential benefits are and trying to balance the innovation potential with the regulatory environment that it needs to kind of function within.
Now, Bitcoin, okay, we get the fact that Bitcoin is a currency. You can exchange Bitcoin in certain environments for items. I could buy this particular widget for a Bitcoin, perhaps. But one needs to be able to trade these Bitcoins across borders, and that's what BitX is seeking to do. It's seeking to be the conduit.
Yes,
for Bitcoin.
Exactly, and the way you can think about it almost is in the internet. When information moves in the internet, it's a protocol called TCP/IP. Now, me as a user, I don't understand anything about TCP/IP. I just open my browser and
I don't
it
care,
works.
it just must happen.
Exactly. So BitX is that kind of browser layer on top of the Bitcoin protocol. If I want to buy or sell Bitcoin or I want to store it, I have a nice interface or app that I can do it, and I don't have to worry about everything that happens in the background.
Now, the question is credibility, isn't it? Because if I go onto my bank's internet banking system, I also have a phone call, and I know what the person on the other side of that phone looks like. I can go to their house and find them if my money disappears. In the world of Bitcoin, a lot of us, and I put myself in that category, remain skeptical as to the security of this intangible currency.
Exactly, and I think that's part of the challenge on our half, or our part, is to build a trusted brand that people can trust. Like with any new industry, there are good operators and bad operators. But one thing that is happening now is that the industry is starting to consolidate very quickly towards the good players. All the money is flowing towards them. All the relationships flow towards them. And so as the industry progresses, you're starting to see the bad weeds kind of go out, and the trusted names stay.
The thing that enthralled me about your raising $4 million is you raised $4 million. Green bits of paper, dollar bills, George Washington pictures on them. That's hypocritical, surely. I mean, if you're in the world of Bitcoin, surely you raise your funding in Bitcoin.
And we could have actually, but unfortunately a lot of our suppliers and our staff we have to pay. We can't pay them in Bitcoin.
Your staff don't get paid in Bitcoin?
No, they don't at the moment. But they can choose if they want to, they can.
Do any?
Do they?
Do any of your staff get paid in Bitcoin?
No.
Okay,
not yet.
Okay, no, but it's an interesting point, because it goes to the level of acceptance. Your staff may completely buy into the concept of Bitcoin, but if they can't spend them, if they can't transact, then it becomes a bit pointless.
And that's also part of what we're doing. That's why we integrated, since we last spoke, we integrated with PayFast in South Africa, so you can spend Bitcoin at places like Takealot online. We've just enabled prepaid airtime that you can buy with your Bitcoin wallet. So as these options increase where you can spend it, the more people will potentially take a small part of their salary in Bitcoin, and I mean, it's a gradual process, right? It's not going to switch on overnight.
But it also comes to a question of regulatory issues. If you paid your staff in Cape Town, because you've got staff in Singapore where you're headquartered, you've got staff in Cape Town, if you paid them in Bitcoin, how would SARS ever deal with that particular issue? And would it be even legal for you to do so?
And it's a very good point. And honestly, that's one of the reasons that I'd rather just not deal with that complication right now. It's already complicated enough building an international business. I believe there will be ways to deal with it. In certain countries, some of the tax authorities in Singapore even have brought out notes to clarify how the tax treatment would work. But at the moment, it's something, we would rather not deal with that now.
No, not yet. I mean, there's a gradual building process.
Exactly.
There was enormous volatility in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
There was the linking, of course, to a drugs website, a guy who was trading drugs online, and that caused a huge scandal, which Bitcoin seems to have survived almost unscathed.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The media kind of really, blew up this whole, drugs thing. And I said to many people, I mean, if you walk in Long Street in Cape Town, you want to see people buying drugs with, you can see them buying with rands the whole time. So the fact that there was one website where you could spend, something for illegitimate purposes doesn't negate from the fact that this technology can potentially transform the entire financial system for the better.
But it did show the vulnerability of the currency and the valuation on the currency, because the fluctuations went completely mad. The value went sky high and then collapsed.
And here's the interesting thing. I remember, you brought this point up last time as well. And since then, and especially in the last 6 to 9 months, the price has stabilized a lot. But now a lot of people
the price to what?
To whatever local currency.
Okay, so the price against the US dollar. So
Yeah.
Is there dollar parity on Bitcoins? What is the closest tangible currency to a Bitcoin in terms of a one-for-one valuation?
Yeah, it just depends on what the market, right? It's like a buyer-seller market price. But the funny thing is that a lot of people are now complaining, saying it's not volatile enough, because a lot of Bitcoin users used to make money trading on these valuation changes, and now it's quite stable.
But then it becomes a toy rather than a tool, and you need a level of stability for credibility.
So this is something, and I think a lot of people don't realize why are all these big names investing in Bitcoin companies. It's because there's a bigger picture, and that is that you can use this technology almost under the hood. So I'll give you an example. We've built systems where let's say we transfer money from Singapore to Kenya, and we can make it so that if you send as 100 Sing dollar, as a user, I just say send 100 Sing dollar. At that instant, it buys Bitcoin, it sends the Bitcoin, it sells it for shilling, and that person just gets shilling. So me as a user, I didn't even have to know that Bitcoin was even involved. But at the same time, that Bitcoin it was only alive for a fleeting instant in time. So volatility is actually not...
But why would I bother with the Bitcoin? Can't I just change my Singapore dollars for shilling directly?
I can, and we did it through a bank, and it takes 3 days, and it costs about $35 to do it for $100. This cleared in 3 minutes and cost $3.
Okay, I'm beginning to see that.
So you can put it under the hood, and we might live in a world in the future where no one knows what Bitcoin is, but it's being used as a clearing mechanism across the world.
So it doesn't necessarily become a currency mechanism of exchange itself. It's simply a facilitator for speed.
Exactly, and then all the local regulatory things will still apply for the rand and for US dollar, and you will work within those frameworks. It's just the plumbing has now changed.
Is it interesting why Naspers has also become involved here? Because Naspers was one of the lead investors in this $4 million capital raising. It's chump change in their world of 10 cents and others. But the fact is that they're beginning to dabble here as well.
Yes, I think, and once again, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of them, but if it just more broadly for why people are investing in this space, I think they see the bigger picture, and that it's not necessarily about can Bitcoin become a currency. Maybe it can, maybe that's a 1% chance. But can you use Bitcoin and the blockchain technology to make moving money more efficient? I think there's a very good value proposition there.
Now here you as BitX sitting in Singapore, you've got an operation, you've got coders and people, clever people with steam coming out of their ears, sitting in Cape Town working for rands, and you're going, suckers. Well, thank you colleagues, I think is what you're really saying. But in Silicon Valley, $4 million is what you raise to get your friends breakfast.
Exactly.
Do you really have a fighting chance against the likes of people like Peter Thiel, the legendary eBay investor who takes no prisoners anywhere? Do you have a chance?
Yeah, we do have a chance, and I think, first of all, our cost base is a lot lower. So when we raise $4 million in Silicon Valley money, it's actually a lot more. We're talking double-digit kind of, money. Yes, some of our competitors have raised their second and their third rounds. Most recently, one raised $100 million. But in the payments, certain industries like Facebook or Google, you can build one product and the whole world can use it. But because we're dealing in essentially some kind of financial services or payments, it is something that's actually quite regulated in a local, within each country, the rules are a little bit different, and it's not something that you can just barge in and launch a business locally. So there is a competitive advantage to us being local on the ground in all these countries that we operate in. But yes, in the long run, we will compete with these guys. But as I said to some people, if we, our guys in our team is just as smart as Silicon Valley guys. And if we work harder and smarter, we can definitely compete with them.
At the same time, Uber is the dominant taxi app, for example, around the world. In South Africa, it's become the dominant taxi app. I've forgotten what the others were called that launched here. That thought they would have a fighting chance against Uber. Do you really, when you've got the dominant brands in the world being developed, they take over? I wouldn't want to start up a book retailer in competition with Amazon.com, for argument's sake.
But that's an interesting thing, because Uber in Southeast Asia, where we have a lot of operations, Uber is actually not the biggest. There's a company called Grab Taxi that's already $1 billion company. It was started 3 years ago by someone who copied Uber. And they are, because they understand the local markets a lot better, they are totally killing Uber. On the e-commerce front as well, Amazon is not in Southeast Asia, so Rocket Internet are building companies there, and they might end up selling to Amazon when they want to go into that market. So I think, and we're talking about financial services, it's a really, really big market, right? I don't think it's going to be a winner-takes-all thing like Google or Uber. I think there will be many winners, and BitX is building one of those winning companies. Whether we're going to be number 1 or number 4, I'm not sure.
How are you going to make money?
Well, we make money on transaction fees.
Do you make bitcoins or do you make real money? I mean,
no, we convert between Bitcoin and real money. So as long as we live in a world where people use both, we will make money. If we work in, fast forward in 20, 30 years into the future, and maybe everyone uses Bitcoin, then we will have to, change how we make money.
Is currency as we know it dead?
I wouldn't say so, really. I think a lot of these things just exist in parallel, right? So I don't think there's this idea of, one day, something like Bitcoin replaces money. It won't. Even email didn't replace letters.
Practically. I mean, in South Africa, certainly it has, because you can't post it.
Yeah, but you can still use the other stuff. It's just most people don't. But
you can courier things, you can't post them.
So I don't think currency is dead. But it's going to be interesting what shape currency is going to be in the future. And, we've worked with regulators on systems where you can, I won't go into the details now, but you can potentially issue a sovereign currency on this Bitcoin blockchain. So we could live in a world where the rand is issued.
But what is currency anyway, other than a digital form? I mean, it's just you get your salary drops into your account. You go in good faith that if you go to a bank, somebody will give you in my case, a private bank
So it's all about trust. There is one big difference, so that if it's issued by a country, the country promises that the value will be there, and that counts for quite a lot. And also you have to pay your taxes in that currency.
Is anybody even beginning to think about it like that?
No, I think people are. I think what's happened in Greece now.
They'll take anything.
Yeah, but what's happening in Greece and in Europe, and with people starting to print money and the impact that has on the economy, I think people are starting to have an awareness of what is money, where does money come from. It's a bit like Tesla. Tesla make these green cars, electric cars. 10 years ago, no one cared. But now there's a bit of a social consciousness around, wait, hold on, should we not be driving electric cars? Maybe this is better. And the same thing goes for money. As people start wondering, but hold on, migrants are sending money back to Africa and paying 10, 20% fees. Should this really be like this?
He makes a compelling argument. Marcus Swanepoel, thank you. Singapore-based entrepreneur, the founder and chief executive of BitX. $4 million in greenbacks raised to help fund the growth of BitX in the face of massive competition in places like Silicon Valley, where the guys are raising triple-digit numbers of cash. This has been the Moneymakers. Tonight's Moneymaker, Anton Swanepoel, thanks very much for coming in. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Thank you for watching. There'll be more Moneymakers tomorrow.